It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, March 1st. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is overwhelmed by the volume of trades we got yesterday. I don't know what's left for Friday, Russ.
I mean, you have no idea how many texts I get. What about this prospect? What about that prospect? It's like, I'll get to it. Don't worry.
All right. Well, how do the Flyers fit into all of that? Chuck Fletcher had some things to say. We're going to get into that and the Rangers moves that will affect our matchup in tonight's game, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Flyers. That is where we post about our episodes and Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail. That's how you can ask us mailbag questions like we will get to today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So subscribe. You will get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube. So subscribe there as well. Russ, we got a pre-trade deadline presser from Chuck Fletcher, which was a pleasant surprise, I must say. I didn't really expect him to get out there until after the deadline had passed, but he did have some interesting things to say, including potentially not saying the word rebuild was accurate, but saying, we're done here. We're not making the playoffs. We're sellers. Really just understanding like the state of where things are in a way that we haven't heard him express before.
Yeah, it was an interesting day. I get a text at like 10:44 that the Flyers are practicing at 11 and Fletcher's talking after that. So I literally just left the house the minute I got the text. I get there. Some of the reporters who go to every practice every day, they're going downstairs to interview the guys. I go upstairs, drop my stuff off. I go interview the guys, go do Fletcher, go on Sirius XM. My whole day's been like that. So um, it's interesting. Look, Chuck Fletcher tried to reimagine and remake what was going on for real with the Flyers this year. So when we go back to before John Tortorella was hired, they made contract extensions. They acted like they were a team that was going to be in it, and they got John Tortorella because they thought he could turn the team around. Then just a couple months ago, Chuck Fletcher said, "Hey, we're just 5 points out." Remember that? Now it's like, well, yeah, we're not rebuilding, because rebuilding is stripping everything, and I'm not getting rid of everybody. And it's like, no, Chuck, that's not rebuilding. That's just totally tearing it down. That's not what a rebuild has to be. So they're never going to admit what they're doing because they changed it midstream. And so now it's kind of like, all right, so you're doing what you're doing, but you're only taking on young assets and you're trying to only get draft picks. Gee, what do we call that? So again, a little bit of a weird press conference in that regard. I asked him about salary retention because it's easy to say for a team, hey, we'll retain salary on like a JVR who's an expiring contract. Sure. But, he said they're open to all salary retention. So that does make the possibility of trading longer term contracts, whether it's now or in the summer, possible. Although in the summer, generally, you don't have to always retain. Sometimes there's room in the cap. But again, this cap, I don't know, it's only going up $1 million, and if it does that. So I still think things can be kind of tight, even in the summer for some teams, especially after deals that are going down now. So, long story short, Yeah, they admitted they were sellers. Fine, we all knew that. I think other than trying to pump up the value of Nick Seeler, which great, but I don't think he's going anywhere anyhow because the coach likes him, and just talking about other players. He did actually say that there's a chance Travis Sanheim's not playing this year. There may not be enough runway left. Okay. That changes from the, well, he'll be back in March thing, and that's fine. I mean, medical.
Travis Konechny.
No. Sean Couturier.
Okay.
Did I say Sean Couturier? I don't know.
You said Travis Sanheim. So.
Oh, Sorry, Sean Couturier. My bad. Anyhow, Sean Couturier. So whether he makes it back this year or not, it seems very up in the air. Right now, Chuck is very non-committal as to what his future is as far as what he might be when he comes back. So that's fine. Cam Atkinson, same thing. So really, what are we looking at? We're looking at the hope of maybe one big contract getting traded, which is fading by the minute, and just guys on expiring contracts getting traded. Is it going to help the franchise that much if it's just the expiring contracts? No. Should JVR have ever come back to this team this season? No. You could have gotten a lot more over the summer than what you're going to end up getting now. And that's part of the problem here. Teams are sort of passing on him. So this is a complicated thing. This is like they needed to rebuild before they got Torts and at last year's deadline. That's what they needed to do. They didn't do that. They pushed ahead with these other plans. And now by pushing everything aside, and, now they're like, well, we don't know how long this will take. And of course I say whatever this is, because they won't call it anything.
Right. I think that, there was definitely this change of tune, but not, with the right melody, if that
Correct.
makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
And I feel like, he did say some things that make me at least understand better where he's coming from and what his thoughts are. Doesn't mean necessarily that I agree with it or that I think, there's confidence in him to actually accomplish it. Because he says he's a seller, but you have to be able to sell to somebody, right?
Right.
And it's not apparent that, especially given the volume of deals that happened yesterday, and, obviously based on a recording time, there may be even more that we're not even going to talk about because they could
Right.
happen at any moment. But, all that being said, with that volume of deals and the Flyers being involved in none of them, I think that's a little concerning. And so it's more than a little concerning, to be honest. But I think that that's wherein the problem lies. He can talk however much he wants about, wanting to get younger assets and, get either, reclamation projects or young prospects or draft picks. But until they're actually in the hands of the Flyers, that doesn't mean anything. And,
Right.
it's his second year in a row saying we need more high-end talent without actually acquiring any high-end talent.
Yeah, I think, again, there are some fans that want the media, me included, to hold Chuck's feet to the fire when he says, I think we're a top 5 improved team. But of course, it's absurd because he also talked about being in the 8th spot of the draft. Okay, well, and most likely he won't even be drafting 8th. He'll probably be going somewhere between 7 and 9 based on the math. So I even chuckled at that because probably won't even be 8,
Right.
But he also talked about, just getting back to the most improved, yet we're in this drafting position. If that doesn't tell you the juxtaposition that he's trying to take, I don't know what would. So the media is not going to
Exactly.
hold his feet to the fire on that one because it was just absurd and we all knew it. So we let it go in hopes of finding other information out. What he would say about the draft was, there's Connor Bedard here, and then like the next 7 picks are kind of in a row. And I don't believe that for a minute. Matter of fact, I know that's not the
You
case.
know that. We know that.
Yeah.
But going back to, when he was talking about the improvement juxtaposed with the availability of good draft picks in the draft this year, if you look at the full quote of what he said, there actually is like you know, some clear understanding there because he said we're not making the playoffs. I can throw numbers out there all day. We did improve, we're the fifth most improved team in this league. That's nice, but we're still not good enough. So he does understand that, he wants to throw that out there because he needs to throw something positive out there.
I
But
know.
he also acknowledges, he's like, but who cares? I mean, he himself is essentially saying, who cares about this level of improvement? We know we're not good enough. He talked about having conversations with Dave Scott, which you know how much salt you have to take that with.
Well, no, I didn't
But
take it
at
with
the
any
same
salt because he hasn't even met anybody, the new guy yet. So there is no salt. Like
did he
here's
say that
yes,
specifically?
he said he was meeting him for the first time today, which was yesterday, based on this.
Delightful.
So based on that, and that was another part of this. Based on that, based on the fact that Dave Scott is okay with everything he does, and he's Dave Scott's guy, blah blah blah, all that. That's all you need to know, Rachel. Like there was nothing quick that was going to happen. So he's in charge of this deadline, like he is. Nothing was going to change that. We talked about this, a month and a half ago. Now, again, maybe something changes over the break after they don't make the playoffs, and maybe he only comes back as the president. But he has a dual title, and they're not going to hire two new people. Like I keep hearing that through the grapevine. So he'll come back as president, but he's not going to come back as, they're not going to just get rid of him and hire two new people and still pay him. They're not doing that. So the fans' dream of that happening is not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Well, there's a lot more to talk about and how this affects some of the rumors out there. Plus, we are going to be facing a semi-new Rangers team with a new young whippersnapper winger named Patrick Kane. I kid, of course, but that deal went through yesterday as well. We're going to get to that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you don't have players on the field with the right skills, whether it's the breakaway speed or elite playmaking ability, that kind of sounds familiar, you're going to have a tough time winning. And the same goes for your business. Indeed is a fast, simple way to make sure you're hiring MVPs. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy. They partner with you on every step of the process, find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, for instance, over 90% of employers get quality candidates as soon as they sponsor their job post. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search. So start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at indeed.com/locked on. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to indeed.com/locked on to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. The NHL deadline, of course, for the trades is this Friday. We've been talking about it all week. And they will be live on the Locked On NHL YouTube channel from 2 to 4 Eastern Friday as Locked On NHL hosts break down the biggest deals from across the league all week. And of course, we'll cover any trades the Flyers managed to make. So subscribe to our feed on YouTube for breaking news coverage. So, Russ, speaking of all of those potential deals, there was a little bit of churn about Jordan Greenway being dealt with the Wild. But basically, considering that press conference, I don't think that's the kind of guy, despite the fact that Chuck Fletcher drafted him and it's a Wild connection. I just don't see it happening.
Well, now I don't see it happening because they've gotten other players, but
Mm-hmm.
I was worried about it happening, not because Jordan Greenway is not a good player, He's okay, but the problem is not at $3 million for 2 more years, not with a no
Right.
trade clause that kicks in after this summer. Like, they need to get out of cap problems, not add another one that they can't trade in case it doesn't work out. So, and again, he would have been 26 and it would have been going against the rule. Look, you can't go with that 25 and under thing anyhow, because Connecting will be over 25 next year. So will Couturier and many other players on the Flyers roster. The whole team isn't constructed of 25 and under. So, and it never will be, by the way. This is just a marketing thing. It's just the
Yeah.
current thing to say this is what we're trying to do, but you can't make a team full of that. And if they did make a team full of that, John Tortorella would probably quit. So, I mean, you know that, and I know that.
No, I know, and I think he does know that too, that he just wants to get more younger players. He doesn't
Right.
want to have all younger players, and he's
R-
recognizing that as Konechny and Couturier and those guys are getting a little bit older, he needs to fill in younger than them now, that they're kind of in the older end of the younger guys, right?
Okay, but just younger to me doesn't do it. Get faster.
Younger and better. I think he said both.
Well, still, that's not enough for me. Get faster. Get a playmaker. There's no playmaker on this team, a true playmaker. I brought that up on Sirius again. I brought it up on this show. There's no like, and it's funny because when I brought up Voracek's name, somebody said, "Well, what about Giroux?" I was like, "Giroux did it all, but Voracek was a true playmaker. He really couldn't score goals for the most part, and they don't have a true playmaker to set up any of these goal scorers that they've been
So
trying to
that's
pick
what
up."
Cam Atkinson was supposed to
Yeah,
do.
well, I mean, and now are we really expecting that down the line? No. But
No,
they need more than just one guy anyhow. You need to
I
draft those
know.
players. It's like,
I know.
so there's all this stuff. So it's like, okay, look, they could be the fifth most improved team and they could still be stuck in that middle. And next year, they're probably going to still be stuck in the middle unless something drastic happens. Even if everything goes right, like we could might as well just roll this tape back to a year ago. Even if everybody is healthy, I still don't think this team would make the playoffs next year unless drastic things happened. And again, here's the other worry, okay? The other worry is, Chuck was talking about the guys down below. He mentioned the 4, 5, 6 players. We talk about these players all the time. They'll be lucky if 2 of them are ready to play for the team next year full time. That would be fortunate. And if it's any more than that, then I think they're forcing it. So,
No, I think that's fair.
yeah.
We have been, paying real close attention to those guys for this very reason, to make sure that we're, correctly analyzing what the team is doing at the management level, that, and saying, do they know what their assets are or not? And so I think it's a very, very salient point.
One more thing that may go under the radar here and get swept under the rug is they only have 4 more call-ups the rest of the year. And I went on a mini rant on Sirius for that because I basically said, and this is something we've been consistent with on this show, Chuck he did say at one point, probably the team you see it after the deadline is going to basically be the team unless there's injuries. We only have 4 more call-ups. And the Phantoms are going for the playoffs, so we don't want to mess with that. That was his out for that, which some of that is true. But how much time did they fritter away this year without giving guys a chance to get some of that experience because they thought they were in it or thought they were going to turn it around or at least play better? That was lost time. You don't get back that lost time. We've talked about that.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I want to at least talk about the Rangers a little bit
Sure.
for tonight's matchup. Of course, that Patrick Kane deal is official, and we will be seeing him against the Flyers in tonight's game. We won't be seeing Keandre Miller because he's
No.
suspended for 3 games for that spitting incident with Drew Doughty and the Kings. And so that is actually unfortunate for them. But at the same time, I think the focus will be on Patrick Kane. And I think one could argue that it's similar to the Giroux situation because there was like a 1 team only allotment from Patrick Kane said, I want to go to the Rangers and nowhere else. So you got to take what you got to take. And I think that the Rangers did okay, all things considered. I think they did similarly to the Flyers here.
I would say this was a worse situation than what happened with the Flyers, because I think Bill Zito was gracious compared to what's happened here with what the Rangers
Yeah.
gave Chicago. Chicago didn't get much. Even if they get a second out of it, great. But, again, it's Patrick Kane. And I get it. It's 75% Patrick Kane. But there wasn't a prospect's name in there. There wasn't a high pick. There wasn't a first-round pick. So this was not much for the Rangers to give up at all, just to see if Patrick Kane could fit in. So, again, but that's because Kane basically was public about things and went back and said, try again. And when that happened, the Rangers tried again because they realized, okay, the price just plummeted. And it did.
Yep. So, in addition to doing that, they did a similar deal with the Preds for future considerations for an AHL level player in Austin Rushoff. And they had also traded Vitaly Kravtsov to Vancouver, so they cleared some contract space
Yeah, that
in
was a
there
terrible
as
trade.
well.
That was for
It
the
was,
Rangers. It
but
was a horrible trade.
yeah, I think so too. I just think they felt like they had to in order to make room
I
for
know.
all of this. Yeah, so they're really going for it, that's for sure, and I'm
Yep.
sure that they'll want to put that on display against the Flyers, and
Yep.
I
They'll
I
put
said on
Kane with Panarin. Don't worry, so they can get
Yep.
comfortable. And if Patrick Kane scores a goal, maybe magically the 2010 goal puck will show up because that's still
Oh
missing.
god.
It's missing. Nobody knows where it is, Rachel.
Yeah, it's not something that I concern myself with
I
at
do.
all
I
in
want to
my
know where that
life.
2010 goal puck is. And Chris Pronger joked about it, but you know what's going to
Does
happen.
not matter.
It
Does
does
not
matter.
matter.
A linesman
No, it
has it, and
doesn't.
when they retire, it'll go for on auction somewhere, but
All right.
still
Well,
missing.
getting back to the current day New York
Mm.
Rangers and Flyers matchup. Well, first off, are the Rangers set now, or do you think they've got more to do?
No, they're set. I mean, they're going to have enough trouble, and this is a good kind of trouble, but trying to figure out even just who's on the power play anymore because they have so many candidates, and sometimes that could be a problem. So they're going to have to sort that out the rest of the season. But their offense is high powered. Their defense, I mean, for the Flyers game without Miller, it's a loss. So that's something where the Flyers might be able to take advantage. But again, this
Yeah.
is a game where the Flyers defense has to be on top of their game. And just to point out a big time flaw and something that happened at the New Jersey game we were at, when you're down 3-1, middle of the second, you don't start having your guys pinch for like basically every shift the rest of the game just to try and get that next goal, to try and make it 3-2. There's other ways to try and come back from behind, like cycling the puck, like holding on to the puck, like actually maybe just trying to keep the puck away from the other team at times. But if they do that against the Rangers with the amount of firepower they have, if they're down like 2-1, they'll get destroyed. And because the Rangers are faster too, the same way the Devils were. So that's a flaw that needs to get fixed because, again, you should only pinch guys once in a while, like even in that second period. But they were doing it too often. I don't know how you felt about it, but I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, it was definitely noticeable. That's for sure. So I think that they really have to stick to the defensive plan that they go into the game with. And, the offense, it'll be there or it won't. But I think that, being there for your goaltender at this point is more important, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see how this one goes tonight. I'm a little scared, I gotta say. I think Patrick Kane gets a goal and an assist. That is my prediction for this
Okay.
one. But we have a few of your mailbag questions to get to, and we will do that coming up next.
The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because new customers got a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point scorers and threes drained. Again, maybe bet against the Lakers. I don't think they're making the playoffs. Sorry, LeBron. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, Russ, we've got a few mailbag questions this episode, and this is a good one based on all of the activity that happened yesterday. Are there any teams left who need anything the Flyers can offer at this point?
I still think there are. I mean, again, this could be an old, dated answer for maybe based on what might happen in the middle of the night, but Carolina still needs help on their power play. I think Vegas can still use another forward. Um, there was one other team that could use another forward too. I can't remember, but even a team like Buffalo might add somebody at the last minute. JVR be good for them because they're still trying to prove to their fans that hey, they're in it.
Yeah.
So I still think there's teams, even Detroit, depending on what happens in these next few games. So I know it looks bleak, but you can't really. They want everybody. They want us all to just like give the definitive. They really screwed this up at the deadline. You can't until after the deadline.
Yeah, and I think the Buffalo option is a real good one, because of their specific needs and the fact that, well, first off, we could potentially get our pick back from them, right? But
That's a pipe dream, but yes,
they have 3 second-round picks
I know.
in this year's draft. So even if you say give us the middle of the 3, however the standings end up, like, that's a pretty good return, and they can probably spare it because they do have 3 picks in that round. So that's the one I'm keeping an eye on the
Okay,
most, but, we'll see what happens there. I just hope Buffalo really thinks they're still in it at this point.
yeah.
The next question, what's your take on the Leafs moves, trading for Luke Schenn again and sending Rasmus Sandin to the Caps?
I know that some Leafs fans are over the moon that they got a first round pick. Okay, fine. You burnt down the house otherwise. So you better get out of the first round because if you don't get out of the first round, this is like the same game plan that every other Leafs GM has done. This is Kyle Dubas scorched earth. Rasmus Sandin is a good player, and now
Yeah.
you've basically you've taken some other guys that you've gotten in trades and saying for the next 2 years these are our guys, and Rasmus Sandin could be in this league for 10 more years, so or more. So I didn't love it. I get some of the moves as far as how it makes them better, but they better win because if they don't win, it'll be really ugly in a couple of years.
Yeah, and they're downgrading on defense essentially in the couple of moves that they put together, but at the same time, they've got some and cap monkeying to do, and this was a way for them to gain a little bit of cap space
Well, they wanted
as
to be
well.
tougher and clear out the neck, and they got guys that can do that in McCabe and Shen. But McCabe also has injury problems. Giordano's getting older, so it's like their defense. This is probably the best defense they've had in a very long time, but it's a
Well, they
temporary
could
defense.
afford to. That's what I'm saying is they could
Yeah,
afford to
it's
have
a
a little
temporary
bit of the
defense.
downgrade. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question, is Kevin Hayes a Flyers player next season?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. He was one of the players that spoke before the presser, and it was actually quite generous of them to put up JVR and Kevin Hayes, who have
It
been
was.
on the trading rumor block. And both, JVR was more hedgy about it and said he keeps his phone in airplane mode, but
Yeah.
Kevin
Yeah.
Hayes was like, "No, I want to be here." So take that for whatever it's worth at this point.
Yeah. I think Kevin Hayes knows that the odds are he'll be there.
He
But he
doesn't want
said
to
he and
say
Torts are
anything.
fine. I don't believe that.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see how the summer goes at any rate
Yeah.
with him, I think. And then last question, and this is an interesting one on the cap side. Will the 2 regional sports networks going bankrupt affect the future cap?
I think it will. Now, the only question is, will it affect next year's or the year after? I think next year's, because it's only going up a little, probably stays the same. And the league just says, okay, we'll see how revenues are this year because we expect them to go up. But what they were talking about in 2 years, like, hey, it's going to go up like $4 million. This could stop that from happening because, like, a lot of
Yeah.
teams aren't. This is not affecting just hockey; it's other sports too. So the NHL is like last in the pecking order. And so, like that last, whatever it is, quarter, third of the season that these companies have, they're not going to pay it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And so I don't anticipate the cap going up very much, if at all, in that following season, which, if I were a GM, I would be planning on very little increase over
Me
the
too.
next couple of years. And
Yep.
you just got to work with it, and that's your job.
Yeah.
All right, wrapping up with a Flyers fun thing. Cutter Gauthier is Rookie of the Month for Hockey East for February in 8 games, 3 goals, 7 assists. So not too shabby, Cutter.
Yeah, he's looked good. Keep it going.
Absolutely. All right, that will do it for today's show. We'll be back again tomorrow with a recap of the game against the Rangers, any latest trade deadline activity and how it affects the Flyers if it's not Flyers moves. Plus, we'll dig into a prospect profile. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. Send in your questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You could email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now make your next listen game to game NHL. It's every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's on your Locked On NHL feed, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.